open source product that we are grateful exists so that we can meet in virtual space once a month, typically the first Thursday of every month. And in July, next month, it will be the second Thursday, so we can avoid the weekend and days around 4th of July. So looking forward, it's the second Thursday of July, and then back to being first on August and up till January when we skip the New Year's week. Okay, or skip around. We don't actually skip that month. We are in Metro West Boston, and we do not limit ourselves to membership from that area, but are very excited when someone from further away says, we want to get in touch with you. So do feel free, if you're watching this on our YouTube video channel, to join in and participate if you can. The information is on our website, NatickFOSS.org, and lots of information there for you to see, including the current agenda for today's meeting. I'm going to bring up a version of that agenda by sharing my window of the agenda.
Good.
There we are. This is the agenda that you should want to see. Our NatickFOSS user group meeting for today can be accessed by way of your own computer. If you go to NatickFOSS.org and go to the archive link, it will lead you to the upcoming meeting, which is today. And you can, in addition, use your smartphone, pointing it at the screen of your current device, a laptop or desktop. Taking your smartphone, click on that picture, and you'll get the access to the live links that we will be viewing here. It is not possible for you to click any of the links that I'm scrolling through with my pointer at the moment, but we will link and go to some of these pages. Typically, we follow some of the links during our discussions so that we can look at the actual text of a page. Otherwise, if it's a video, we rarely show those on our interactive Jitsi meetings because the multitude of video levels don't typically work well together, and showing a video within a stream makes things lag so much that we recommend you go, for example, on the Ranking Linux Desktop Environments link, that if you want to view the contents of that video, that you do it on your own, perhaps not during the meeting, though we will talk about the information in there. In any case, that's the housekeeping of the day. This message we are incorporating so that you can get these extra features of our session. Our actual agenda doesn't look quite so open and clean on a shared screen. Okay, any questions about that? I won't necessarily repeat all that information every month, but I thought we'd go through it so that everybody understood why this block is there at the beginning of the meetings. This was suggested by Jill Miller, and we thank her very much for that suggestion. No comments or questions? Okay, let me quickly double check. I don't see anybody's name here who represents a new user, so the chances are we do not need to go through our FOSS introduction. Everybody here knows what it is: free open source software. So I'm going to begin with the FOSS news of the month. Those of you who are standard users of a desktop or laptop probably use GNOME as your desktop environment. Not everybody does, I don't, but the GNOME Foundation has a new director. He's Canadian with some programming experience, and the people at GNOME are excited to have somebody with that combination of experience to help them advance the cause and the processes going on inside the GNOME workspaces, intending to keep GNOME as one of the premier desktop environments. Anybody know of this person or have worked with him in the past?
No, I've never heard of him before.
Okay.
But I do use GNOME.
Anybody other than me use something else than GNOME?
Well, yes, I do. I use Cinnamon. That's what Mint comes with.
Now, Cinnamon is a derivative of GNOME, or is it something entirely different?
It has significant differences. Significant differences. For one thing, it relies on Xorg and uses very little Wayland, although it's moving that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Other differences. So, yeah, it also uses a menuing system that's different.
All right. Desktop environments are touchy with the users of FOSS software. Desktop environments are almost battle-worthy, as people say, no, this is the best, no, that's the best. We don't argue that point here often, though we do find interest in comparing what others say about it, and we have our own personal preferences, which we sometimes share. So the GNOME Foundation at least has a new director, and that is news for everybody to follow in the future. Now, UN moves from using Google Forms, a very proprietary online method of collecting information. They have instead decided to go to CryptPad. And this combination is a way for the UN to avoid support for any one country's support software. The Google Forms, and all of Google for that matter, are built within the confines of the United States of America, and that causes people who are not strictly American to want to have alternatives which don't depend on a political entity. This has been true for a long time with the United Nations, and this move is one of several that make the United Nations somewhat more independent, even though their headquarters is still here in the United States. It's an intriguing process that organizations like the UN have to go through from time to time to avoid being engulfed, I guess. Anybody here used CryptPad themselves? Apparently not. In any case, maybe that will be something that one of us decides to explore in the future and can report back on how good a decision the UN has made. Now, the European Union is not the same thing as the United Nations, obviously, but they are a political amalgam of the countries of Europe. And they have decided that they need a license that is compatible with all of the copyright rules of the various member states. They have developed a European Union public license, the EUPL, which is their product, and therefore they control it as an organization, as a grouping of European states. And there is some benefit that they see to having that license that is a FOSS license and compatible, as a matter of fact, with the GPL in its primary version, both GPL 2 and 3, along with the Affero General Public License, which is web cloud based. So being compatible with those as of version 1.2 of the EUPL means that licensing is copyleft and allows mixing of different software components as long as they have one of the acceptable licenses listed here. Excuse me, right into the microphone. And that seems like a good idea. Anybody have experience that says otherwise, that this is a bad license? I don't use it. Clearly, I'm not part of the European Union states. So most of what I have does exist, the little software that I do is GPL licensed, and my writing is usually Creative Commons attribution license, very open sharing in both cases, with little expectation of someone getting back and saying, even thank you. But that's one of the things about open licensing that we as FOSS users need to understand and generally accept. The GPL, and I presume the European Union public license, do expect that any improvements that you will make to work that you release as covered by the license will also be allowed to be reshared. And that's the big deal by most standards, that if you change the structure of a free software item and update it and improve it, that your updates and improvements come back to the community in general, so that all people benefit, not just your local company or your local country. Comments about the EUPL?
Only what I just found out by looking it up with one of the AI engines. The main difference seems to be that EUPL licensed code can be, as you say, combined with other types of licensing, whereas GPL tends to be more restrictive, that the entire work has to be licensed under GPL.
I hear another hand coming up.
Here's one. I think it's really big news. Linux is the preferred tool in a lot of places, and this is one more big one for the list. I'm glad to see that the U.S. is trailing on this one and can join anytime we're allowed to join by the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good plan. Let's see, Linux is already the primary operating system in space. A lot of places around the world also. Good.
Okay. And Fedora 43 announced that it will be only Wayland, no more X as the windowing system. Xorg will be in Wayland as the, I suppose, subsystem of Fedora's 43 Wayland process. The windowing process is moving in, of all FOSS is apparently moving toward, or excuse me, all of Linux-based FOSS, as I understand it, is headed in the direction of Wayland, with a lot of the implementations improving dramatically in the last 2 years, making the system friendly enough for developers to add its expectations into their products. And there are very few that demand X as the windowing system. At this point, if they're updated and modern, you're probably not using anything that can't be used with Wayland only. So Fedora 43 is saying, this is it. We're committed now. Now,
It's been,
Bob said that Cinnamon is still X dependent. So there are some groups that are holding off, I guess.
Well, what I meant to say is that there are X dependencies in it. However, they are also trying to move toward Wayland, and there is an X Wayland session available.
Okay. And Jerry?
yeah, I put this in there because I think it's pretty important. X has been around since the 1980s for X Windows for Unix initially, and then of course Xorg for Linux. But a lot of the developers from the original X continued with X.org. And there was once a presentation, and I forget the guy that wrote it. I used to know him at DEC. The death of X, long live X. A presentation. We actually had him at our BLU meeting a couple of times. And X, it was a pretty good windowing system going back for many years, but it was very, very low level. Wayland is developed as a higher level from the standpoint of developers. But I think, sometimes you have to make the transition. And I think this is a good time to do it.
Did you say you are currently using 43, or is that a next session?
I'm on 42 right now.
Okay.
But Fedora has been defaulting to Wayland for 10 years since I worked at Red Hat.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they made the change. And our in-house version of Jitsi was Blue Jeans. And Blue Jeans wasn't compatible with Wayland at the time. So we had to actually shift to X for our Blue Jean presentations. But that wasn't really a big deal.
All right. And I have a feeling that as we move forward, the Wayland success story will expand, and the majority of FOSS software in the Linux world, at least, we'll have that as the process behind the ability to have graphical user interfaces that work seamlessly and allow easier development of software for our use in the future. And that's a good thing.
And also I'd like to mention that the name Wayland is chosen from Wayland, our neighboring town here.
That's exciting.
I think most of us actually live in towns that neighbor Wayland.
I certainly do.
So do I. So does Dick and Jill.
Yeah. And if you are only a town or two further.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm 2 towns further. 2 towns away.
You're a few towns. You're over in the Waltham
Lexington.
You're a town
or
guy.
Lexington. Yep.
Okay. Good news. Wrong.
Wayland is right up the lake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We can boat there.
Yeah, well, I used to live in Wayland for a few years.
And since you brought it up, do you know why Wayland, Massachusetts is the origin of the Wayland name? Was it DEC that was so heavily involved with their Boston connection?
I think it was one of the many names around here imported from England.
Yeah, but I think that the software people actually chose Wayland as a town. There were a few other pieces of software named after towns around here.
Mm-hmm.
Like unto Fig Newtons, which were named after Newton. The company had other cookies named after Concord and things, but
Yes.
they never lasted.
Yeah, Newtons were named after the city of Newton. And at some anniversary several years ago, they actually had a mile-long Fig Newton.
That is huge. Was it still edible by the time you got from one end to the other?
I don't like Fig Newtons.
You wouldn't care.
Well,
I used to
figure
like
that, Jerry.
But I lived in Newton at the time.
Oh, wow. We do have interesting connections for sure. Okay. FOSS. Oh, does anybody else have some FOSS news that I did not get into the agenda?
It's a little bit FOSS newsy, but I will be touching upon the upcoming releases of LMDE 7 and Mint 22.2.
Okay, we'll wait until your presentation for that then.
Yeah, Ed has an interesting comment here,
Okay.
which I know, but I never thought of. Drake, Weston, and Plymouth also came out of that. The people that actually developed these things were using towns in Massachusetts.
And I'd like to add Ubuntu. I've been looking at it for the first time in more than a year, and I'll bring it up under hot hardware as an extra because
Software?
it's either software or hardware. And Ubuntu is the test I'm trying to apply at the moment. New stuff. And I'll also have another topic going with it.
Okay. Then back to our agenda page here. History of a FOSS product called JavaScript. JavaScript is at 30 years old, something that wasn't intended to be such a big deal, but has turned into one of the most well-used, if not well-designed, scripting languages in all of computing. It started out a very simple scripting language for the Netscape Navigator in 1994, and here we are in 2025. So it's been 30 years since it was introduced. And the name, of course, is confusing, or was particularly at the time, because there is a language that was popular at about the same time called Java, but JavaScript was not related to it. And over the years, a whole bunch of things have made JavaScript popular. It ties directly into the HTML of web pages, and of course, with the internet and needing to share documents that weren't static, plunk, 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 just a picture. We wanted more interactivity to make it seem like television, or to give some pizzazz to the page, changing colors, changing things when you moved the pointer over text, etc. Those kinds of things were first dealt with using this scripting language. It was easy to use and easy to learn. Both Netscape and Sun were involved in the development, and many, many other people have been, and it's now part of the World Wide Web standard for presentation of information. This long article is mostly just factual. I will point out that it is written by an employee of the Dino, or Deno, or I suppose maybe Dino, if you look at the picture there of their software. The company has its own agenda, and as you get further and further through the article, they introduce more and more about their own contributions, which are probably not insignificant, but you don't want to focus on the fact that this was written and promotes the Dino Corporation too much. It's accurate up to the point where it starts to be company based, and I'm not saying it's inaccurate beyond there. The article is well written, but don't think that it is without a slant. That's all I'm saying. I know I use JavaScript some. I'm no expert at it. It is probably the current language that I do use the most, in fact. The problem with JavaScript as a language embedded inside the web for FOSS users is that it is possible to compile JavaScript using other software and makes this code inscrutable. By compiling JavaScript, it is impossible to tell what's inside the code. It does reduce the size of a web page, and many times when a page is loading, you know it's got a lot of JavaScript because the page takes a long time to load. In these modern times, that's unusual. For example, when I play a puzzle game called Wordle, every day it takes about 1.5 to 2 seconds to load from the New York Times website. Wordle is just fun, and it is entirely constructed using a JavaScript application. It was initially a release that was an open source product, was purchased by the New York Times from its developer, and the original code was accessible in the sense that you could see exactly what was involved. Since the Times has taken over, it is somewhat less accessible, but it still takes time to load because there's a giant code base that has to be brought in each time for every game. So that's true of all the JavaScript that's out there. And some web designers are beginning to be a little nervous because pages and applications that are web-based are giant these days and can take almost forever in terms of how long to expect a delay just because the JavaScript is loading. There are other reasons why pages load slowly, a lot of them being tracking software. But JavaScript is both good and slightly problematic as we are in our modern era. Anyway, that's my opinion about it. Anybody else have strong opinions about a 30-year-old piece of scripting software?
Yeah, well, I did a lot of work in Python. And when generally an app is distributed in Python, it is also compiled. But usually the source code's available.
Right.
Python actually has what they call a JIT compiler, just-in-time compiler, that's used. So when you first start running a Python program from source, it'll actually compile itself into a binary. And there's also a separate compiler. So if you're a software developer and you want to distribute your software, you then use the compiler.
And that is very efficient, particularly for those kinds of software that are delivered in a distribution or added to a person's computer after the fact. The JavaScript, on the other hand, is almost always a daily delivery kind of system because it is the code in a web page, and that web page is expected to load quickly, even with our modern fast broadband connections that most of us enjoy. A huge JavaScript program, it's noticeable. That's all I'm pointing out there.
Yep.
I have nothing against compiled programs per se, just that if they are not FOSS or free, available, open of their source, a compiled JavaScript is, maybe not FOSSy enough.
Well, it performs a lot better though.
That's true. That's true. And I can only imagine that if the script were a multi-chapter script, that it would take longer to load in raw text form anyway. Okay. FOSS history is always with us. And sometimes we have several items here. Does anybody have an additional item of note for this month? Okay. We don't always. And sometimes we don't even cover a topic, so it gets left empty. And that's how the world of our presentation goes here monthly. Okay, in hot software, a few items of interest. The Linux Experiment is a video series presented through YouTube and through PeerTube, which is Framasoft's competitor. Framasoft is a well-known FOSS development company. The Linux Experiment, run by a man who names himself Nick. I don't know his last name, but he speaks clearly and vehemently about a lot of Linux and FOSS software. He has asked people to give him feedback, and among the things of recent videos, he asked people to give a ranking of Linux desktop environments. And like me, Nick comes in with his belief and that of the people he queried, that KDE has the best experience overall. And in that same tier, he finds the GNOME desktop environment, and Mint, Cinnamon, if I recall correctly, is there as well. And then the tiers go down to less and less popular and less polished different distributions for desktop environments. And if you wish, this video is worth watching. Again, I'm not going to play it here, but you don't have to agree either that his conclusions are correct. He just presents things well and asks you to contribute sometimes if you're interested. I have referred to the Linux Experiment videos before and probably will again, even though we don't watch them during our meetings. Any comments on the conclusions that Nick reached? I guess maybe people haven't watched that, or they don't want to argue online. Okay, the second item is about using a developer tool known as Git. G-I-T was written by the same person, Linus Torvalds, who originated work on the Linux operating system. He wrote Git for his very own personal use because he was unsatisfied about the other available work processes that were in vogue at the time. Yes, comment?
Well, not exactly. He had one that he really liked, but it was commercial, and his sponsored access, where it wasn't costing him out of pocket for the commercial license, his sponsored access to it was going to go away, and he either needed to find somebody to sponsor his access or dig deep into his own checkbook or write something as good over the weekend.
Thank you for that clarification. That is an important thing. He was satisfied and happy, but it was proprietary. And that's part of the experience many of us have had. We're satisfied with commercial products, but they kept moving the price and raising the price and changing the access. And we have talked about Microsoft as a significant example of a company that has constantly made our lives uncomfortable, I guess. Their current version of the Office suite that they call Microsoft Office is not available as a package so much as it is available as a subscription. Adobe does the same thing with all of their products these days. You don't buy a copy that you can use and use and use and use. You pay an annual fee to use only the current version that they offer, with changes and whatever they see fit to do for updates. And some of us like the independence of not having to do that. And Git was an example of moving away from proprietary, maybe not for the same reasons, but Git was developed and has become extremely popular. But most people use it in a software forge, meaning that somebody runs a website and servers which store the code for you and for thousands and hundreds of thousands of other developers. Well, we may not be developers, but it's interesting to know that Git is possible to use without a forge. And this is a very intriguing article about how to do it if you're dissatisfied with the forge that you have been using.
I use
For
Git.
Hmm?
I use Git locally here, just as to keep track of some of my software changes, just as any other, just as any other source control language. But Git, normally you have a master copy somewhere, and you clone your local copy after that, and then at some point you would push your code up to the master. And Git is very good at allowing multiple developers to work simultaneously.
And it has become very popular for that and other reasons, I suppose, besides being as open source as Linus Torvalds would want to develop.
I
We do-
use
yeah.
I use it without a forge in several ways. Consulting, we had our own private repository server. For one website I support, I have a repository tucked under the web server marked "Do Not Share" via the web server. And when I push to that web server, it publishes the web page. And the other that's enough for now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Bill and Jerry. As far as forges go, these items, did it again. These items that are on our agenda are actually presented from a forge. And I'm just going to quickly jump to it. Our forge of my choice was the GitLab forge. They don't store our software because this is not a software development package, but this space exists for us to develop a shared agenda. And as Jerry pointed out, he was the one that contributed the Fedora 43 item, and our board of directors in NatickFOSS all have access to this so that we can develop a common agenda for each month's meeting. Some months are very busily shared. Other months, like this one, we're mostly one person, me in this particular case. But this is an open group, the board of directors being the ones that have access to this. However, if you are listening online and or wish to be more a part of this, you should consider going to the NatickFOSS website and signing up for our discussion mailing list. That discussion mailing list allows you to suggest things for board members to actually post to an agenda. This is not a private process. We're not trying to be proprietary or closed in any particular way. We just don't open this particular Forge page up too broadly. We want to make sure that it is developed carefully for any given month. But given that, the suggestion process is best done through that discuss mailing list, discuss at the NatickFOSS.org website. So give that a look in case you are interested. Okay, back to the agenda as we are exploring it. Now, free software and free Libre software. Libre is a Spanish term or a Latin-based term meaning free, but not necessarily in the gratis meaning. It means liberated. And Europe has its own free software foundation organization similar to the Free Software Foundation based here in Boston. The people at Free Software Foundation Europe have a web page that helps people decide which of the many open licenses that are out there are best for a particular project. They work for developers. They make the process open and simple. They have tools for using code from multiple sources, and that ties back together with the license that was developed by the European Union. These two groups are not individually responsible to each other, but I'm sure that the effort is parallel. Consequently, this is a useful site if you are a developer and you want to allow your work to be effective in Europe and not just in the United States, because the rules over in other countries are not necessarily the rules by which we live for copyright. Okay, so that's just for information. If you're a developer or a budding developer or a wannabe developer, this tool website might be good for you to check. And hot software in the form of the Debian distribution and the Debian scope of software. Their board of directors has determined that there are too many pieces of dormant software that no maintainer is currently responsible for, or no maintainer is interested in spending a lot of time on the software anymore. Maybe it's old, maybe it's not worth much effort at this point, but they want to make sure that the dormant packages don't drag down their reputation, apparently. And this article addresses what they are planning to do about it to try to bring in more developers and maintainers, or to sideline some software so that it doesn't get included in the broad distribution that is the Debian software system. That's important because a whole bunch of other distributions beyond the Debian use that software base in theirs. Ubuntu, Cinnamon, all of the all the FOSS distributions that use the DEB system of packaging are based on the Debian software repositories, basically. Those are on servers and are shared to others openly because it's FOSS software. But if you're going to give that kind of responsibility to anybody, it's nice to see that Debian wants it to be as clean a set of files as possible, not carrying a bunch of old cruft that nobody's willing to keep up to date. That is a good move, I think, and will improve software. Anybody have comments about that? The notable alternative to that Debian system is the software packages that are not DEB packages. The RPM system is Fedora's, and there are other package management systems that have package repositories for theirs, but the Deb packaging system is very, very popular. Okay, another video that we won't watch, but is about doing videos for the web and or just for making a video. There's a web contributor, somebody who produces videos on a regular basis called Veronica Explains. It's a YouTube video in this case, and she goes through a brief overview of how it is possible to do extremely professional work using Linux video components, video software components, bringing together a whole bunch of pieces, including the KDENLIVE. I'm not sure exactly how that's pronounced. I've tried many times. Kdenlive, I think, is how it's done, but that's a non-linear editor. And the Kdenlive software is very professional. It is not at all proprietary. It's developed by the KDE group of software developers. She also mentions using the OBS, Open Broadcasting System, which is as also a software package that's FOSS. It is for the streaming process of doing video production. And then she has several other editing overlay tools that she uses to create titles and callouts and things like that. And if you want to get into video, this is a good starting point to give you packages to look at. I know Dennis has made a couple of videos. Dennis, are you with us and willing to tell us what software you have used?
I have generally used OBS for doing that.
And as a linear editor, do you find that that is sufficient?
Well, OBS I use for recording video,
right.
I suppose I should say. And then I have used, what is it? PyTV as a video editor if I need to combine things together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gotten to the point now where I don't have to save every few seconds because it'll crash. So
Now, I will say thank you, by the way, Dennis, for that feedback. This person, Veronica, uses some fairly well put together pieces of hardware to make her life easier. Doing a webcam video source is not necessarily the best process. She has some professional level equipment, $200 or $300 per camera as the minimum cost for that kind of thing these days, as opposed to just a $25 webcam. But given that and using good microphones to avoid the squeaky sound that comes from some headphones, it is possible to put together a very effective workstation setup without having to go into using proprietary software on top of that. Okay. If we want more, somebody suggest a good topic, a demo maybe of the video process of our own group. I have only done a very minor amount using no particular software, so I can't at this point say I'm anywhere near expert enough. But there are lots of experts here. I'm just running the show for the moment. Okay, hot hardware. Speaking of things like that, Bob is ready to give us talk about his upgrade and wireless network issues that led to the upgrade as he's moved into his new digs. Are you ready for us, Bob?
If you can stop sharing, I can start.
I shall do that now.
And I am going to try my entire screen. And right now we're just seeing you guys. And now I will bring up a presentation. And let's start from the first slide. Okay. So I moved in to Brookhaven at Lexington from Waltham, and Comcast set me up with new equipment, which included their XB7 X-Fi Comcast gateway. That gateway does Wi-Fi 5 and it does 5 gigahertz. It does not do Wi-Fi 6E at 6 gigahertz, and it does not do the new WPA3 encryption. So I wanted to try out Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and WPA3, and partly this is due to how many close neighbors I have at Brookhaven. Ready?
Ready.
Okay, so I wanted to try out the new Wi-Fi 6 and WPA3 technologies, partly due to how many neighbors there are here at Brookhaven. We have relatively small apartments, and the walls, ceilings, and floors are pretty transparent to wireless signals. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth transmits readily. If I use a Wi-Fi analyzer, for example, in the 5 gigahertz spectrum, I can find like about 20 to 30 different devices in there. So I believe that the best defense in such an environment is to use Wi-Fi channels not commonly used by others and to have better security than my neighbors. The whole idea is that if the wolf is at your door, you want to have the strongest door. So there were some hardware changes I decided I would want to make. Number one, upgrading the gateway. The XB8, and I think I may be able to show something about this. It will do it. The XB8 modem has some specs. It talks about various things. It has DOCSIS 3.1, which is a bit higher than the previous gateways. It can use 802.11ax, known as Wi-Fi 6E, up to 6 gigahertz. It has tri-band, which means it has 2.4, 5, and 6. And it says unknown speed because that will vary. And the aggregate speed will vary. The Wi-Fi range of up to 3,000 square feet is only at 5 gigahertz. 6 gigahertz has much less range. It has a large number of device capacity and various other things. And I have the 1 gigabit per second plan, but you can go higher. It will do WPA2, which is standard today, and WPA3, which is a bit newer. And it's a relatively small gateway. And it was first introduced, you'll notice, in 2022. WPA3 has been around since, I believe, the mid-20 teens. And so it's been around for a long time. It's just beginning to become something people will use. Getting back to our story, I'm going to close. Yeah, I may have closed my browser. So let me try something here. All right. Anyway, just a second. Okay, yeah, I still am in the meeting. I just wanted to make sure of that. I start from the current slide. So this gateway can handle all these things that I talked about. I did not want to move up to the XB10 gateway because even though it can also handle Wi-Fi 6 and it can handle future Wi-Fi 7, it puts limitations on the so-called landline, which is really VoIP. My phone would not have as much backup, and some of the features might be lost. They're trying to move people toward wireless, toward mobile. Okay, so I had the gateway, and I can test whether, in fact, certain connections are in the 6 gigahertz range, or whether they are, in fact, using WPA3. Now, in Windows 11 Pro, the feature of 6 gigahertz is turned off by default, but you can turn it on fairly easily through a graphical interface. In Linux, you need firmware and drivers that have to be updated. You need a kernel that can handle these upgrades, and you may have to add some of the firmware and drivers outside of the kernels. Linux kernels 5.15 and higher do support WPA3. In the Cinnamon interface, it's kind of confusing to determine whether or not your connection is actually using WPA3. And there are command line tools which also, in Linux, don't always give a straight answer to that. WPA3 is not a term you'll find in terminal output in Mint or LMDE. So I think at this point it would be a good idea to show what the applet really does show, the network manager in the Cinnamon desktop. And I will bring that down for a little while I bring up my network manager, which you can see in the corner of the screen. I'm not revealing anything terribly personal here, by the way. I have an internal card that is the Qualcomm Athros variety. It will only get me up to wireless N, so it won't really do Wi-Fi 6. I'll be talking a little bit more about this later. I got a dongle, which is a Netgear, and it does go all the way up to Wi-Fi 6. So there are two kinds of settings we have here, network settings and connection settings. The network settings interface, if you go to the properties, it does not list WPA3. And so you cannot really set WPA3 in that interface. And I will cancel because I don't want to change anything. But in network connections, we have a different interface and it's a little more advanced. So in this Wi-Fi security, first of all, I know that because it's WLX with a bunch of hex code after it, I know that that's my USB. That's the dongle. And the security I can set for WPA3 personal, or I can allow the network, the gateway, to choose. And that allows for backward compatibility. But what I am using is WPA3 personal. Now notice the warning. The connection contains some properties which are not supported by the editor. That basically says that the other interface doesn't support WPA3. And it says that these settings will be cleared upon save. That is not true. And I have performed a test which reveals that it's not true. So later on, I will let you know how I determined this. And it did not initially involve Linux because, again, monitoring who's using Wi-Fi, what band they're in, what channels they're using. I have not found good GUI tools that handle 6 gigahertz for Linux. There may be kernel level limitations at this stage that prevent that, at least in LMDE6 and in Mint 22.1. So testing revealed that the Wi-Fi Atheros card is not going to be able to do AX. And it will, however, do WPA3 because that's still around in Wi-Fi 5. I have a reference, which I'm not going to go to, about my motherboard. And it uses a PCIe 3 internal slot. Identifying Wi-Fi card hardware, I do want to show some of what the terminal output is. So let's call up a terminal, and let's call up my notes on the matter. The first thing that I did was something that requires sudo, so it requires my password. I'm going to do the motherboard identification. And this is done with DMI decode. That is the command. But I'm just going to paste it. And I need my password. And that shows the motherboard. It uses SM BIOS to get this. And it's an Asus Tech Prime. And it shows what it is. And it shows the revision. The serial number will show. I don't consider the serial number to be too personal to show in a public meeting. It's just my motherboard. It's not any way to get into my system. Not directly. And it shows other things about it, that it's replaceable, etc. Another command that is useful, if I have a PCIe card, which is my internal card, I can list the PCI devices with LSPCI, which does not require my password. And it shows a bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with networking. But down near the bottom, there is going to be an Ethernet controller, which is Realtek, and it tells which one it is. It has a network controller. This is the internal card. Qualcomm, Atheros, and then it says what it is. It has AC wireless. And AC wireless does not quite go up to AX. And so it's a wireless network adapter. And that's the kind of information you can get. By the way, you can also tell what kind of USB controller you have if you have an external enclosure. Mine happens to be AS Media. That was important for determining how to do trim out there. But for our purposes, we're interested in the network controller. A USB dongle won't show up in LSPCI, so I had to use LSUSB for that. And this will show what my dongle looks like. LSUSB shows, again, a lot of things that don't have anything to do with networking, but it shows one right here. I'm going to highlight it. That device is a Netgear dongle, which I bought. And that is the device. I might be able to do a little bit more information with sudo and verbose. Now I will be able to find, okay, that's the USB. I might be able to find my adapter. Let's go up to the top of what this shows. As you can see, there's a lot more information, but there is a way of using the grep command to get to the networking interface. Let's see if I can tell it. Okay, well, in any event, there was much more available, and if I come across it within the next few seconds, I will show you what it was. Let me go all the way up on this. Okay. That's the host bridge. That is okay. I think I will see if I can do a pipe here for grep. I think it's I. Anyway, that may get it. No, it's not going to do it. Okay, I'd be guessing what it is. But anyway, there are commands for this.
Misspelled network.
Oh, that's what I did. That may get it. TWORK. Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, that's still not going to get the. I didn't use the correct grep parameter. Anyway, there is a way of getting network out of that. Oh, I know how I did it. I didn't use that command. I used a different one. But anyway, I identified the card. I found its capabilities. I found that I should probably upgrade. I did try to upgrade the internal card, and I'll talk a bit about that. What I was looking for is, first of all, for the internal card, the LSPCI, grep wireless. And that is going to tell me what my internal card says. Now I am going to use the I'm going to use the list hardware command, lshw. And I think I'm going to do a sudo on this. Come on, into the terminal. And that's the -C network. And that should show some nice things. Okay, so it shows my Ethernet first. Ethernet always shows first for some reason. And then if I come, here is wireless interface. And this one is still the Qualcomm Athros. Oh, that's still the hardware. Okay. And then there's a wireless interface that is USB. I can tell by the extra hex code that that's the USB interface. It isn't a simple LWL0 or something like that. It's WLX and huge numbers of numbers after it. And it tells me, here's the important thing, configuration. It tells me it can use the driver MT7921U, and it tells what the firmware is, and it can do multicast, and it allows for various other things. But that driver tells me that it can do Wi-Fi 6 and 6 gigahertz. Anyway, there is other information that can be done. So I did try a GUI tool. And let me see if I can grab that tool and just briefly hard info. Oh, I don't have that in here. I have that in a different Linux. So we'll skip that for a while, but it gives information in a graphical form, but not enough information. It doesn't give as much as you get from these command line tools. Okay, and I also ran similar tests over in my Intel NUC. So that's enough command line for that. And let me see if there's something I should respond to. Yeah, MT7921 is a MediaTek piece of firmware or driver. And so that's what's actually at the core of both the Asus that I had and the Netgear. They both have MediaTek chipsets, but they're different chipsets. Okay, so let me move on. For Wi-Fi dongles or cards, it's a good idea to have an antenna. And there are external antennas for both of my Wi-Fi 6 interfaces for both of them. Okay, I'm not going to show that tool. And the NUC did a little better. Its internal card is an Intel AX201 gig plus, and that does Wi-Fi 6. It does AX, but only in the 5 gigahertz band. So I decided I would use the same Netgear dongle in there as well in order to get up into the 6 gigahertz band. The more up-to-date Intel card is the AX211. But the card is soldered in, so I can't do that. So I did try for a while an Asus card, which had a MediaTek chipset, the AXE 5400. Unfortunately, in LMDE6 and Mint 22.1, the connection kept dropping, and eventually LMDE wouldn't even work at all with the Wi-Fi 6, and Mint stopped working shortly thereafter. I don't know which updates caused that to happen, but there were kernel level updates. So again, I have some references in here. So I never did figure out what went wrong with the internal card or with the Wi-Fi 6 from the Asus replacement. So what I have is the Netgear Nighthawk AXE 3000, and it does do all the Wi-Fi tricks that we need. And it connects by a cable, so it doesn't really have to hog a USB slot or a port. And I can use a dock, which I'm using. I do want to show something about what I did with the NUC, because NUC is small form factor. And small form factor PCs have a real problem. I may get into some difficulty here. I am switching now to that, and I want to make sure that I am highlighted. There. Now you can see it. This is the Netgear dongle, which sits in a cradle. It connects to a docking station, and the docking station goes to a Thunderbolt 3 input port. So even though it's a USB-A Type A connection, I can get the full advantage of Thunderbolt 3, which you really don't need for Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi can do perfectly well through USB 3. And then the other thing that I want to show is sitting on my table with my, with my backup drives is the one from my tower. And that goes directly into one of its ports because the tower has a lot of available USB 3 and 3.1 ports. So I have no difficulties with that. And so I am going to go back to my original camera. Okay, so back to our slideshow, and I will try to wrap up pretty fast. Next thing. So I tested the various configurations, and let me review what shows up in Mint. In Mint with the wireless networks, I have the Netgear device and I have the Qualcomm device. Right now I have switched off the Qualcomm device to avoid interference, and I have the Netgear device on, and it shows the networks that are available here. I can even show more from the Netgear device, and it has all these others. And they've got pretty strong signal strengths, considering that many of these are 6 gigahertz. Now, in Linux, without adding special kernel modules, the 6 gigahertz band is not usually available at the present time. This may change in upcoming versions of both Cinnamon, both Mint and LMDE. So anyway, I got a second dock for the other computer. Mint 21 and 22.1, that's a typo. It's Mint 22.2 and LMDE 7 are coming out sometime this summer or this fall. Just a minute. I can get down to this slide. I'm going to do an edit here on the fly. And okay. Okay. Now getting back to our slideshow. Mint 22.
Bob, it came back. We were seeing something that said the bandwidth was too tight.
Did it? What were you seeing?
A black screen with BP. It says,
let me get into that screen. Come on. What you were seeing may have been, this is a sharing screen. This is, yeah. That is a screen which does not have the webcam on. But
it
if I
didn't
turn
appear to all of us, I don't think. I think it may have been.
It may have been only some people, because if I turn on my camera here, I don't know. Oh well. Anyway, the bandwidth may vary. It always does in Jitsi. So getting back to the slideshow, that can happen in Jitsi. So starting from this is going to be pretty much the wrap up of what I'm doing. LMDE 7 and Mint 22.2 are both expected to use updated Linux kernels. For Mint, this won't mean much of a change, as it already has a kernel which can support Wi-Fi 6 and 6E, and I believe it does support the 6 gigahertz band. It does support WPA3, and I'll tell you in a second how I know. The change here might be that the Cinnamon desktop environment, especially the Network Manager applet, may be able to show more of what the capabilities are. I don't know if that's being upgraded. LMDE 7, however, will upgrade to the Trixie kernel, which is Debian 13. This will improve support for Wi-Fi 6, 6E, 6 gigahertz, and the WPA3 standard. Neither change will make cards like the Asus card that I had work any better, because the firmware, the driver, just doesn't seem to work as well in Linux. It works perfectly well in Windows, but not in Linux. This happens with some hardware. So that is basically all that I wanted to cover, and I can release my share. Have I stopped sharing? Yes.
Thank you for that very thorough exploration of Wi-Fi concepts, along with your particular tribulations.
Mm-hmm.
It's important for us to see a working solution appear like that once in a while.
Yeah.
Not everybody digs in as deeply as you have, and
Oh.
I commend you for not only doing the digging, but making it a very shareable experience for the rest of us. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad that people did understand and were able to follow what I was doing, because I don't always keep things organized enough.
I like your notes particularly that are both for you and help us to see what your thinking was at the time you made them. That's
Yeah.
great. Okay. Anybody else having Wi-Fi issues that we might discuss at this point? No? Okay. I'm going to reshare here my window of why, oh why. I lose my window for Firefox Firefox when I do this sometimes. Let me bring in Firefox, and then go back here and share window Firefox. Yeah. Okay. It does not appear to want to share minimized windows. Anyway, that's a problem I think I'll figure out sometime. It's maybe related to how we use Jitsi. Either way. The petahertz transistors are definitely hot hardware. Currently, we have phototransistors that can do processor level work, but they work at a speed that is modern and wonderful. These guys at the University of Arizona are working on a new form of phototransistor at room temperature conditions, so they're not going to heat the world up. Petahertz is 1,000,000 times faster than the current optical transistors. 1,000,000 times. Now, it's obviously at a research stage, so don't expect to have that coming to your computer room in the near future. But how that will compare is, in my mind, similar to the way my TRS-80 compares to my current Samsung Android phone. They're just light speed differences between my original TRS-80 8-bit computer and today's massively faster handheld devices. I hear a hand. And who is it?
'Tis Jill.
Jill.
I am wondering if this will ameliorate some of the problems with the AI data centers using gazillions of watts of electricity.
Well, I can certainly hope so. But I suspect what they'll do is just ramp up the expectations for the AI and run them just as hot as they can anyway. That seems to be
I expect you are right.
seems to be the way corporate America does things. We promise, we'll promise again later. Don't bother us. Thanks for your money. Okay, that's a semi-political comment. I'm sorry. And that being a future hope, petahertz transistors are not in my computer at the moment. Ed, would you like to tell us something more about the Atari in a postage stamp sized package?
Okay, yeah, okay. I had to turn the mic on. Yeah, that's an article I found at Ars Technica. A gentleman developed a computer that apparently would run old Atari computer software, and the size of the printed circuit board is no bigger than a standard postage stamp, and it looked pretty cool.
The big deal here, as I read the article, was that it's truly a hardware implementation with modern processing power rather than any kind of emulator that's involved. So it's in many ways an update clone, not a direct clone, but an update clone of the original Atari. And nobody seems to think, within this article at least, that it violates anybody's copyright rules. So he has offered this postage stamp processor, hoping that people who are users of the Atari from their past will explore and find good reasons to do the same kind of things they used to. Apparently, Poland is also one of those places that has embraced the Atari much more than other parts of the world, in part because the designer of the Atari system was Polish originally and wanted to make sure that his work was not kept out of his home country, even though it was developed during the time it was difficult to export hardware. A group of Polish companies were able to work with the developer of the original Atari, a person named Tramiel, who then got the hardware into Poland, where it became extremely popular, unlike the Apple or the TRS-80s or even IBM's, I suppose. This new version is called the Atarino. I don't know much more about it. Thank you for giving us the chance to talk about it, though, Ed. Anybody want to buy one? I suppose you can. Let us know what you find out. All right. A hand went up. I hear it.
I wonder if we can
And
use
Dick and
this
Jill.
stamp on the envelope when it gets delivered.
Just ask for a SAISY, right? Can I get my SAISY in the form of an Atarino?
No, this is a good place for my items if you wish.
Okay, please.
Okay,
Do you need me
let's
to
see.
stop sharing?
Well, I've now. No, I don't think so. I will show an item in a while. First of all, I have 4 issues. One is a question, one is an answer, one is a reminder, and one is something else I'll tell you when I get to it. I'll start with the answer just to be totally irrational. And I presume you can see us.
No.
Nope,
No?
not at the moment.
Let's set up so you can see me.
Stop sharing.
Ah, okay.
Can you see me?
No, I just see your DA.
Really? We see us.
Yeah, I see his headlamp.
Okay,
Do you see a headlamp?
a clue.
Uh-huh.
See it now?
I think some people are. We're having bandwidth issues, I suspect.
Well, anyway, I have a nice new headlamp for the spelunkers out there. Oh, he does a lot of different things. One of which may be turning off. You never know.
I'll get it.
Got it.
There you got it.
And if you're a spelunker, I don't recommend this headlamp because it's 50 lumens of light.
Ugh.
Good for local work, not good for looking ahead at where the drop off is in the cave. So, but I have a pocket flashlight I would normally use at night around our house. It's 70 lumens, and I run it on dim almost all the time. So this is plenty for something that's near you. Like looking inside your cover removed computer to look for a bad connector or to swap a drive or something like that. Wonderful. And you get 2 free hands for the same price. Big attraction of headlamps. So if you're interested and don't have one already, it looks very nicely built. They're closing out this particular model at Harbor Freight. You have one near you, and after tax, it'll come in at just under $3. Now, this would normally be $15 to $20, and it looks like a very decent one. So I recommend that if you might find it useful for, threading needles, small repairs, especially inside your computer, highly recommended. And the price is right.
It's at the closeout shelf way in the back of the Natick Harbor Freight. Not with the other headlamps.
Just walk in and ask. It's pickup only, and we couldn't find a way to place the order to hold it for us for the pickup. But they had a bunch of them still there at Natick's Harbor Freight yesterday morning. And I predict that by Monday, they'll be kind of hard to find in a lot of the Harbor Freight stores. So find one near you. You can ask if they have them in stock, and then you can go over and pick one up. That's the answer. I'm going to save the question. First, a correction. And the correction is I opined that the town of Wayland probably imported its name from England. I was right, but in the wrong way. It was East Sudbury until 1835. A family that imported the name from England had a fellow in Wayland who was both wealthy and president of Brown University. And I guess in 1835, these were popular topics. He was a temperance advocate and an abolitionist. And they decided to name the town after him. After he and his friend, the lawyer, built the town library. So there you go. Came from England, but not the way I thought. Let's see. What was the one that was, the reminder. I would like to, I'll send something, Algot. You can put in the right place. I think the weather's going to be right on one of these weekend days for a wonderful backyard potluck. We ought to do it while the weather's great. They've been fun. And we're happy if you bring your friend, your wife, your whatever, as long as they don't mind talk about Linux.
And you can bring things like soda or ice cream or things like that you just have to buy.
But if you want to work 2 weeks creating something wonderful, we'll tolerate it. That was that. Now for the big one, the question. Bob Premack was kind of wondering which way to go a few days ago, and he worked it out. I think he spread the contagion to me, however. My computer winked out on its keyboard backlighting. Now, that's not a lamp problem. There's a bunch of keyboard little lamps in there that all went out together. Could be something for my new headlamp to look at inside, or it could be a software issue, and possibly something even weirder than those. So I was wondering, my early clues are my computer has directions for just about everything except disabling the keyboard lighting. I can change its brightness, that's not the problem. I tried the button. Uh, I took a look at Linux Mint, my favorite operating system, and it said, we don't do that. I looked at the applications I'm using. I'm using Nightlight, Nightlight or Nightshade, I forget which. And it seems to say it doesn't do that. It's just ups and downs and when. Yeah, at your button push or by the time of day, looking at what time the sun is setting and the sun is getting up. And I usually run it on that automatic setting. Everyone's denying any ability to just flick it off. I've loaded an older Ubuntu with no different results, and I went to upload a newer Ubuntu, and I've had terrible luck downloading it. I'm going from the official source. It immediately opens a special download folder and puts into it 7 partial download files. At the end of that, it should, by my past experience, just put them together, leave one file in there and tell me it's done. It doesn't get to there. The download files get bigger and bigger until I've got 3.1 gigabyte files, 7 of them, all of which still say they're partial. They haven't combined. And I've done this over and over. It keeps coming that way.
And the total is supposed to be 5.5
and the total is
gigabytes.
14 gigabytes for what might be a 3 to 6 gigabyte range of final size. So something weird is going on there. And I'll download a few other different operating systems just to make sure it's not operating system before I open the computer and play with my new headlamp. But has anyone had experience with losing the keyboard backlighting? Just suddenly? Totally? Okay, that's one more clue I was fishing for.
I can tell you that that's very often a driver issue or a firmware issue.
That's what I was hoping. That's why I'm looking for a different set of tools to download that might give me the clue that that's exactly what it is. Linux Mint doesn't seem to have a lot of unhappiness about this on standard installs. So I'll go back, I'll try again, but that's a good clue. Thank you. The fact that 5 people aren't complaining about the same thing this week. Okay, that was it for me. Enjoy your new headlamp. Oh,
Thank you very much, Dick.
Good.
Okay. I'll share again and we'll see what we can still fit into the time we have available. All right. Share window, Mozilla. And hot internet. This is just a commentary of sort. Microsoft has decided to shutter Skype. I don't know if anybody was still using Skype, but it was one of those things that made people excited about talking over the internet instead of just using their landline phones way back. Shuttered Skype because they bought it, and over several years they've developed Teams to replace it. If you use either one, this is just news. This is not actually FOSS news because neither one of the softwares were, but Microsoft often comes up during our meetings, along with the end of Windows 10 support. This piece came to us from Laura Michaels, who is unable to attend our meetings at the present time, but she and people like Jerry are very much interested in running free software for everybody meetings with install fests and so forth. This is an opportunity because a lot of Windows 10 computers will not run Windows 11. So you have to go out and buy a new computer. What do you do with the old one? Windows 10 will not have support. Well, why not make it a Linux computer? This article is not an article so much as a website promotion. Okay, I hear a hand or two that want to speak. Ed?
Okay, yeah, just a quickie regarding Skype. Prior to Microsoft acquiring them, I believe that there was a Linux package for Skype.
I think you're right.
Yep.
Yes, I've used it.
And Bill?
I would argue that Microsoft, being Microsoft, is very much a FOSS News issue for the very reason you're bringing it up on the second point. The demonstrates why open Libre software is good. Regarding Windows 10, there is a, let's call it an unofficial patch for Windows 11, which will allow it to install on unsupported hardware. It has some sort of piratical name.
While being unofficial, it does seem to offer an option for those who must have Windows, but
Right.
It's better from our perspective to see if some of those computers could be re-energized with a faster operating system than they're potentially going to get out of Windows 11 bigger and more
they'd
crammed
still get
with
all the Windows. Right. A operating system upgrade without a hardware upgrade is a downgrade in performance. And in addition to which, you get all of the Windows 11 spyware. So it's not terribly desirable.
FOSS forever. Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, my wife runs a game that does not run under Windows 11.
Ooh.
She can't do her games under Windows 10. I mean, under Windows 11, so she has to keep Windows 10.
Just disconnect it from any kind of infection source like the world, and you'll be all set.
Yep.
Good luck. Okay. I'm back to the agenda. So this end of 10 is just a recommended way to deal with keeping your computer working using Linux and or any other FOSS operating system. I see a hand from Dick and Jill.
Yeah, first of all, I think this is a really big opportunity. Lots of free computers out there, and lots of people would like to hang on to their computer if they can. My thought, and as you know, we work with older computers, but we pick powerful ones, and they're awfully cheap that way. So I'm thinking if we wanted to, we could contact local schools or school departments in towns and say, you provide the place, school cafeteria probably, you provide the computers, you got a lot of students who have them, and you have a lot of parents who have them. We'll supply a team that will sell them one little Linux on a thumb drive and install it in parallel or instead of, and show them something about Linux all on the same day. I'll bet we could do that in school after school. I'll bet we could get the schools to sponsor a way to advertise it in their town, etc. Are we up to it? I don't know. Might discuss it later, but that's what I'm picturing. I think, thanks for flagging it.
Sounds like a thing to consider. What do you think, Jerry? Shall we consider a wandering install fest concept?
Yeah, we could do that. Our problem in the past with an install fest is just getting a site that we can use properly. Right now, we've got UMass Boston, which we're have one scheduled in September sometime. But that'll probably be on a Wednesday afternoon. I am scheduled to teach a class in Linux at UMass Boston in the spring semester next year.
Oh, good for you. Good for you.
You pointed out a problem. We can do it in September, but I think we better tell people to hang on to their computers about now, not September. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. This, I think, we'll need to discuss at length because it involves a good deal of coordination. I doubt we can pull something together with less than a couple of months notice, or maybe a trial run sometime during the summer when the schools are open for some kinds of activities, but clearly it would be a fall activity for most schools. I don't think we can get anywhere near a school between now and their closing dates, the end of June. They have far too many things going at this point to add something that impromptu. Anyway, good plan, but we need to make some plans. Okay, see what we can do to finish up here without leaving too much behind. Computer security. OpenSUSE, another distribution, has decided that the desktop known as Deepin violates too many policies, bypassing the security team review. So they have decided that if you want Deepin for your desktop, it won't be hosted on a Debian on an OpenSUSE system. Teachers are not okay with generative AI. I want you to read this article. It's a reasonably long one. It is something that we discuss here, generative AI and what it does. It goes very much together with the second article here, ChatGPT, and its use in the law. This particular lawyer has found that his opponents using the ChatGPT to respond to his motions makes it very easy to defeat them because they haven't considered the law the way it is. They've considered the way ChatGPT has been mangling the law. And then the others all fit that same mold, but with the exception of the last, are all serious. The last one in this section is that the future of the web is AI. No, 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 no. That is definitely a satire, and you will see if you read through that. As some of you are clearly aware, I do not like the concept of AI, as it defeats much of the thinking process in people's experience. And that's the main thrust of this article. It's a concern of educators up and down the line that they are foisting something off on our undeveloped student minds, and that it stunts that development process significantly. And that brings us to the last 4 minutes of our official time. Anybody have general comments that we can deal with before the end of our 2-hour that I didn't think we'd make? Comments, questions?
I think Al got froze.
It does appear so.
Got his AC up too high.
My apologies, I got dumped there at the very end. I repeat, anybody have last minute things that they want to get said? Okay, I'm going to hope that everybody has some air conditioning that they can get to before expiring this afternoon, which is still, it's 94 degrees outside my house. Yuck. That's supposed to be August.
Yeah,
I used to wear
93
it.
here.
Phooey.
I'm good with heat.
Okay, I thank you very much for joining with the rest of us, and hope that you have a wonderful June, and we'll see you on the 8th of July, if that's my memory is correct. Yes. No, excuse me, the 7th of July.
Mm.
No, I was
No,
right.
it's the 10th of July.
The 10th, boy, good nobody's listening to me and checking for themselves. The 10th of July. Let me quickly check to see that the actual meeting archive says so. I believe it's correct. Yes. Whew. When I wrote it down, I did it right. I just can't bring it out of my brain. July 10th is our second Thursday of July meeting next month.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there will be a very exciting agenda, and maybe it won't be too hot. We'll all be ready and raring to go. Thanks for coming today.
Hey, see y'all later.
Sayonara.
Till next month.
Enjoy.
Popeye's chicken wings.
That's fine.